Now is take some time to do some Q&A. There's, let's see, 95 questions in our Q&A. So I'm going to do my best to get through all of these. Let's start. I'm just going to start at the top because there's not another way to do it that I can see. So the first one is, do staffing agency wages qualify for the program? 1099 wages qualify for the program, as well as, I'm assuming you're talking about the Paycheck Protection Loan Program. 1099 wages qualify. And so I would assume staffing agency wages qualify as well. Yes, I believe that's correct. Stephen Jones says, are you aware of the affiliation rules, which are only suspended for accommodation and food service? Yes. So what Stephen is talking about is these are if you have multiple entities that are co-owned by people. There is ambiguity around this right now. It seems as though if you own more than one entity, you're going to have some disallowed benefits under the Paycheck Protection Loan. The reason it seems this way is because most of these rules follow the SBA rules. I've read this bill. I've had my guys read this bill. There is nothing in this bill that says that you can't be a private equity firm or a VC firm owned business and yet not qualify for this Paycheck Protection Loan. But the small business rules, that's the way the small business rules are written. So we've got to wait and see what the regulations are on that. It's a little unclear to me as to whether or not they're going to allow investor-owned and really VC and private equity-owned businesses qualify for this Paycheck Protection Loan Program or not. So stay tuned for that one. I'm just not entirely sure on that. All right, let's see. Eric Fenmore, my payroll has tripled since early 2019. How do we handle that best so I get the loan based on my first quarter 2020 payroll versus first quarter 2019? They allow you two different time periods in which you can actually do it. So you can go from February 15th to February 15th if that's more advantageous to you, or you can do full year 2019. So really want to pick out which one is more advantageous to you. Okay, this is Stephen and Rob in Houston. We are partners. If we get a loan from the SBA to use to cover our salaries, would we be considered employees so that the loan would be forgiven, or would we need to pay back the loan? Even owners are considered employees under this. Now, again, I think there's going to be some regulations that I would assume that you can't somehow pay yourself some giant bonus just to keep wages up there. I would assume that owners are going to have some limitations on that. But yes, owner salaries do qualify, as it's written in the bill right now, for forgiveness underneath the Paycheck Protection Loan. All right, let's see here. What else? I have an existing SBA loan serviced through the CDC and Wells Fargo. What, if anything, do I need to do to apply for the 6-month of deferral of payments? Great question. You need to go straight back to your banker, call them up, and if it's serviced through the CDC and Wells Fargo, yeah, go back to, if you've got a banker at Wells Fargo, that's where I would go. They seem to be the most, or the CDC, either one. But ultimately it's Wells Fargo who has to administer it, I believe. So check with them, but you would qualify for sure for that 6-month deferral. That's really great. All right, let's see. From Steve, we have an opinion from an employment lawyer that we are not an affiliated group of companies and therefore not considered to have more than 500 employees in each company for the purchase of the DOL and FFCRA. Would the same criteria for small business be applicable for SBA loans? It appears that it is. Again, that's what we're going to wait on these regulations because that's still sort of a little bit up in the air, but it appears that that's correct. Okay, next, let's see. Do you have any info or guidance on commercial eviction / rent deferment in California? Similarly, what about utility payments in California? So yeah, we've been working with a ton of our clients on there appears to be a growing consensus around landlords that they are not going to be evicting people. What I'm seeing is landlords take either one of two positions. They're either taking a position of a hard line of we're not even going to respond to this for 90 days until we figure out what's going on, or they're having conversations about extending terms on the back end, deferring rent for up to 6 months, even in some cases up to a year. And I've seen both of those. I've also seen, frankly, utility companies been pretty lenient about this, which is kind of amazing. I mean, I never would have expected them to be more forgiving, and they really are and able to work with you. So check with, but the other thing we should do with utilities is if you're not in your building, get them reduced. If you're not using the internet service in your facilities, you can stop it, right? Make sure you're obviously not having your IT stop, but think about what are the utilities you could reduce or cut down that could save you some money. Because ultimately, even in this Paycheck Protection loan, you got to pay some of it back, or you might have to pay some of it back. And if you're not profitable, remember, you're paying back loan proceeds with after-tax dollars. And those after-tax dollars mean you have to earn $2 for every $1 you pay off in a loan. Because if you earn $2, one's going to the government as income taxes, the other one can pay off the loan. So you've got to get to profitability. It's more important than anything else. This Paycheck Protection loan or even the payroll tax credit is going to give you cash. But that doesn't mean it's going to give you survivability. Ultimately, the way you're going to survive in your business is by being profitable. All right, let's see. Does a line of credit count as another means to capital? Yes. So for the disaster loans, Bethany's asking, does a line of credit count as another means to capital when qualifying for the SBA disaster loans? Yes, it does. So unfortunately, if you can get a line of credit, you're not going to qualify for the disaster loans. Greg asks, can you get a 7A loan first and then apply for a disaster loan later if you need it? The 7A loan that they're talking about now is in fact that Paycheck Protection loan. What they've done is they've made it a Paycheck Protection loan. They're still, I'm sure, traditional 7A loans, but I don't know why you wouldn't go with the 7A Paycheck Protection loan because it's forgivable or at least partially forgivable. And so you could absolutely go there first, and then the disaster loan, if you needed it, might be available on the back end. But I don't think you could get the disaster loan if you already have the Paycheck Protection loan. Let's wait until the final regulations come out, but that's what it seems to hint at. Let's see, Umar says, will the 2.5 times the borrowing also include the utilities, mortgage, or just the payroll costs? No, the 2.5 times is just the payroll costs. But remember, it's all those cool things that you get to put into payroll costs, like employee benefits, matching contributions on 401ks, other kinds of pension profit sharing plans you might be giving to your employees, severance packages that you might have negotiated over the past year that got paid out, commissions, bonuses, all of those kinds of things go in there. So make sure you're putting all of that stuff in when you're trying to quantify what that borrowing base is on what is called wages. Let's see, SBA abatement or deferral. I'm not sure what that question is getting at, but the SBA abatement is for existing SBA loans where you get that 6 months principal and interest abatement. That means that they're just not trying to collect on it for those 6 months, and it just adds 6 months to your term of your loan. So they're not saying you're not going to have to pay it. Their abatement and deferral, I think in this case might be similar, but I might not be answering the question correctly, so I apologize if I'm missing that. I've been told by other experts that we can apply for both the disaster loan and the Paycheck Protection loan. Again, if you get the disaster loan first, the rule, at least the way the bill's written, you have to roll that into and refinance it with the Paycheck Protection loan. And I think the Paycheck Protection loan is going to get turned around really fast, whereas the disaster loan is really a loan of last resort. So that's going to be much higher level of scrutiny on that. And it's a 3-step process, which is going to take up to 2 weeks to 3 weeks to get an answer on. So most likely, administratively, you're just going to get caught sideways, where the Paycheck Protection loan is going to come in first, and that's going to prohibit you from getting a disaster loan. Or you're going to wait, get the disaster loan, and then roll it into the Paycheck Protection loan. Either way, I would try to go for the Paycheck Protection loan ahead of the disaster loan because of the forgivable component. Brad Van Dam says, partial shutdown or full. I think you're talking about the payroll tax credit. If you are a full shutdown or had experienced a loss of 50% of your revenue as compared to the same time last year, those are the 2 ways you qualify for that payroll tax credit. All right, let's see. Matt, how about if we haven't been affected yet, but we see a slowdown coming? Well, you would not qualify for the payroll tax credit. You would apply and get a payroll protection loan. So again, this is similar to most businesses. You may not be in the restaurant business where you had to shut down, or the hotel business. You may be just starting to see that economic activity slowing down. Goldman Sachs had a report out this morning. They think we're going to see 35% decline in GDP. That's enormous. that's going to affect every single one of us. So having that cash on hand and having a plan to profitability, I can't say that enough. You can't just get this cash and think you're safe. You have to get this cash with a plan to get to profitability. All right, let's see. Employees equal full-time equivalents or actual headcount? Employees equal FTEs, full-time equivalents. It's not actual headcount because it also includes 1099 independent contractors. So even if you're in California, believe it or not, the independent contractors count towards this. If we only have 2 partners in a partnership, would we be eligible for the Paycheck Protection Loan? Yes. Believe it or not, even a small partnership with just 2 people still applies for you. Let's see, if we apply on April 3rd for the Paycheck Protection Loan, Victoria's question, the calculations start that date and last for 8 weeks. So at the end of 8 weeks, we should submit a letter and proof asking for forgiveness, question mark. So Victoria, very close. The 8 weeks start the day you get the loan, not the date you apply for the loan. So that may be a day 2, 3 lag, depending on when you get in the queue for the loan. And the 8 weeks then, that is where you start tracking what you use those funds for over the next 8 weeks. And that gives you the amount that's forgivable. So you want to make sure you're tracking it. Again, payroll costs are forgivable, mortgage interest, not principal, occupancy costs, things like utility, rents, and even transportation costs are forgivable. So again, my suggestion is separate account, keep them all clean so that when you give it to the bank with the accounting of it, they're the ones who are going to tell the SBA what percentage of your total Paycheck Protection Loan is forgivable. What about bonuses? Are they eligible under the Paycheck Protection Loan? Yes, Jillian, they are. Again, up to that $100,000 cap per person. But yes, they absolutely are. Doc says, I have an LLC and I do payroll for myself. Is my salary considered eligible? It is. Self-employed folks, even if your Schedule C is eligible for this Paycheck Protection Loan. Farouk says, are tips included within the Paycheck Protection Loan? Yes, they are. They are also part of compensation or what are called wages under the Paycheck Protection Loan program. What about payments to 1099 contractors? Yes, those are 2. Paul asks, according to the language in the bill, the multiple is 4, not 2.5, where you're getting 2.5. I'm not sure what you're seeing there, but it is 2.5 times your average monthly salary. Average monthly wages for the last year. For commissions, is it only employees as defined by state or includes independent contractors as well? So I think we answered that one. It's independent contractors as well. Kelly, our bank said you could use the highest month rather than the average toiling month for the 2.5 calculation on PPP. That's not what the bill says. The bill says you have 2 different ways you can calculate it. Either on average 2019, or you can take February 15th to February 15th, February 15th of 2019 to February 15th of 2020. And the date at which you're going to try to figure out the reduction in either wages or full-time and headcount for forgiveness is also the 15th of February 2020. Let's see, how long does an employee have to be employed for them to be included in overall payroll costs? They have to be on the payroll as of 2/15/2020. Kent, if you have multiple S corporations that file independent tax returns with individual tax ID numbers, yet they are all owned under the same exact ownership, and we qualify collectively using attribution as a small business and want to take advantage of the PPP loan, do we file an individual application for each S corp, or can we file an application attributing all our corporations into one application? That is an I don't know, Kent. I do not know the answer to that question. I would guess you're going to need to file separately, but I don't know. That would be a question that I would ask the banker. That's not something that is contemplated in the bill as it's written today. Ori, qualification is capped at an amount of employees. Does revenue or business hinder your eligibility? No, the revenue of the business doesn't matter for this particular case. Good question. Mark, are cell phones considered utilities? Phone bills are considered utilities. So yes, cell phones could be considered utilities under this. Bethany, how do you prove where the PPP money is being spent? Again, Bethany, I would separate out the money. So when they fund the Paycheck Protection Loan, make sure they fund it into a new account, point your payroll to that account, point your rent payments to that account, and all your utility bills to that account. And when that happens, you'll be able to easily prove where all the funds went. All right, let's see here. Lots of great questions. Ray says, so if I have revenue from other sources, how is it split or determined what pot of money goes to what expense? Again, I think what you want to do is separate out the account. It's only an 8-week time period, so you really want to have that 8 weeks of ability to track. That's the only part that's being tracked for forgiveness. Where do we apply for the section 1102 at the bank? Yes, the 1102. Hold on one second. Let me just double check my numbers so I say the right thing here. So yes, it's applied through an SBA approved lender. And again, you can use our organizer or you can just kind of compile it together if you want to. But you want to put it together in a nice packet so that when the bank gets it, they can very quickly say that you're eligible. What if employees choose not to come back? So Farouk, this is a good question because if you have already let go of workers, you can actually rehire them before June 30th and still qualify for full forgiveness. If they choose not to come back, well, then they choose not to come back, and that's going to limit some of your forgiveness of that loan. But again, you can rehire people between now and June 30th. After June 30th, unfortunately, you can just let them go again if you need to. I can't stress enough that this is tough times. You may have to let poor performers go. You may have to let good performers go to save the business. And it's more important to be profitable than it is to make sure that you get the maximum forgiveness under the loans. Let's see. Gina says, this doesn't count if an employee chooses to leave. No, headcount doesn't matter whether you laid them off, fired them, or if they choose to leave. Even if they choose to leave, that's negatively going to affect you for forgiveness. I just hired a new employee. He starts April 1st. I made the offer to him in late February. Is he eligible for the PPP loan? No. Unfortunately, it's payroll before that. Mark, how about bonuses? Yes, as we said, bonuses do qualify for overall compensation calculations, but it's still capped at that 100K. What is the time frame these expenses need to happen to qualify? That's that 8-week time frame from the time you get the loan until the time that you have to submit to the bank, and they determine what percentage was forgivable. We are considering, this is Jillian, we are considering a short-term furlough option coupled with PPP. Can you provide some details on that option, on if that option is possible to be 100% for forgiving the loan? Again, if you're furloughing and your wages then will drop, your forgiveness is going to drop on a pro rata basis based on the percentage of wages drop. So if you were paying, I'm just going to say $100,000 a month in payroll, and you furlough people and now you're paying $60,000 a month in payroll, you're only going to have 60% of your loan being able to be forgiven under this plan. The other 40%, it's going to reduce that because of that loan forgiveness or because of the furlough, because wages is one of the two qualifications. A lot of articles out there say if you just retain 75% of your employees, you get 100% forgiveness. That's not true. There's two different points of qualification. One is a reduction in wages. The other one is a reduction in people. They both offset, or they both are interacting to determine forgiveness. All right, let's see. Are wages included as part of the Paycheck Protection Loan or just the payroll taxes? No, wages are federal payroll taxes are excluded for the calculation. Let's see, Ed, if it's forgiven, will it be taxable as an income to the business in 2020? Ed, this is a great question. No. This is one of the only times when loan forgiveness is not going to be taxable income to the business. It's a great question. Let's see, is bonus income included in PPP loan calcs? Yes. Natalie says, we have moved to a virtual office work from home. Could we use the funds from the Paycheck Protection Loan to prepay for employees' internet since they will be using it to work from home? So again, I think this is going to boil down to, this is not clear in the bill, but I think it's going to boil down to how you pay taxes. If you pay taxes on a cash basis, my guess is yes, that will work. If you pay taxes on an accrual basis, that's not a true expense yet for tax purposes. I think they're probably going to do something pretty similar to that in the final regulations, but right now, that's still not entirely clear. Let's see. We talked about that one. Do businesses with 1099 employees qualify? Yes. When do you think the banks will be ready for the Paycheck Protection Loan? So they're waiting for the regulations. I am assuming these are going to come out any day now. I think the best way to get prepared is to organize all your stuff. You can use our organizer or organize it yourself, but just get all of your stuff together so that you're ready to go in a very complete and professional packet, because you want these folks, these underwriters, to be able to review it, check all the boxes and go, yep, here goes your loan. Again, they're trying to turn them around very quickly. They're only going to be able to do that if they have all the stuff organized. John, what changes to the depreciation schedule for new building construction are part of the stimulus? For example, the change from a 49-year amortization for new building is being reduced for eligible accelerated depreciation treatment. That's right, John. That also applies, just to stretch it, that applies to tenant improvements as well. So you can actually start to take losses against other income, which again, were limited in the past. So this is something you want to make sure you dive in with your CPA on. But if you've got either tenant improvements that you've built out in the last 2 years, or if you have a building that you've been doing construction on over the last 2 years, this can be immediately a positive impact for you because it could save you money in income taxes. Natasha, if I'm a business owner of an S Corp, but I pay myself as an employee, the only employee paid January through February, do I qualify for any help? Yes, if you were paying yourself for January and February, believe it or not, you still qualify. It might be small, but you still qualify. Let's see. Ed says, do you still qualify for the Section 1102? 1102 is the payroll protection loan, and get forgiven if you are an essential critical manufacturer. Absolutely. It's almost who this was meant for. So this, you absolutely do. Michael, how do I apply and how long does it take to get the funds? I think we've gone through that. You apply through an SBA approved lender, but again, use an organizer of some sort to get your stuff together and then do that. And you'll be able to apply as soon as the banks are open for this. Keep in touch with your banker to find out, because it's truly changing day to day, day in and day out. Matt, what if I have a small business with less than 5 employees that are paid on a 1099? Again, they're eligible. We just purchased the business on March 1st. Are we eligible for any help? Yes, you are, because you can go back to the payroll that was there before. You absolutely are eligible. They're trying to save businesses and trying to save jobs. So go back to your payroll that was there before you bought the business, and you can absolutely use that. Let's see. Some of our payroll is for guaranteed income partners, K1. Can we use that as part of the payroll protection loan? Yes, I believe you can. Bethany, I don't understand the math on the forgiveness if you have a salary reduction. So let's assume you kept all of your employees, but you reduced salary from $100,000 a month across the board to $90,000. You're going to have a 10% reduction in the forgiveness. That's the simplest way that I know to explain that. Tess, will you be emailing us the documentation package? Tess, I'll get a live link to everyone who was on this webinar. I'll email out a link to our documentation package to our organizer, so that if you want to purchase it, or if you want to use it, or if you're a TGG client, you get it for free. We can get that out to you so that you've got that. Let's see, John, do employees who resign count as staff reduction? Yes, unfortunately they do. What if your business has not yet been impacted, but you're preparing for a lack of pipeline? Are you still eligible? You're absolutely eligible for this payroll protection loan, and use it. This is a time to get the money, and even if you're not, use it for the payroll and occupancy costs to get the maximum amount of forgiveness. But again, these are loans that are going to help keep you safe as your business turns down. But what we also need to do is make sure you're taking some serious steps to get your business profitable. Mark, how secure is your portal? Well, we're hosting it on Amazon, so it's as secure as Amazon. Norman asks, can we get a downloadable version of the organizer? Yes, we're going to email, like I said, we'll email that out. Brian, I do not have a business yet. I've been planning on launching my business as soon as possible. It seems all these economic funds are only for established businesses. That's correct. Is there any funds available for newly starting businesses? Not that I'm aware of. Nothing in this bill. It was all trying to keep businesses going and keep people who are employed existing. Let's see, answered the 1099 question. If we had an average of 516 employees over the past year, how can we participate? We have 495 today. So I would do 2 things. One, I would take a look at whether or not you qualify as a small business. That may have a pretty big impact on this. And secondarily, it's your average FTEs over that period of time. So you may want to stretch it to the February 15th to February 15th to duck under that 500 if that's your way to get into this. Let's see. Do you have to qualify as a typical SBA business? You do in terms of number of employees. Your annual receipts, though, are not a part of this. The limitation, though, on the top end, I didn't talk about this yet, is $10 million in loans. So you may not qualify for any more than $10 million in loans for this paycheck protection loan if you have a payroll that's that high. Ron, if we lay off up to 25% of our employees, are we still eligible for the paycheck protection loan and 100% forgiveness? Please clarify. Thanks. Okay, Ron. So this is the screwy part of the math on this. If you reduce your workforce at 25%, no, you're going to have a 25% reduction in the forgiveness. If you reduce headcount by 24%, but increase salaries for everybody else so that wages stay at 100%, you'll get 100% forgiven. If your wages, however, drop, you're going to get a percentage reduction, pro rata reduction for whatever the overall wages reduction. It's not an either or, it's an and. You have both that both tests you have to satisfy. Where is the organizer on your website? Again, we'll send a link out if you're having a hard time finding it. We'll make sure you got that. Let's see. I've heard that the payroll protection loan is based on 2/15/19 to 6/30/19 payroll. My payroll has tripled since then. You can actually, what you want to do is probably use the most recent payroll. If your payroll has gone up a lot, is use the 2/15/19 to 2/15/2020 payroll, because that's going to give you the maximum loan amount. Dominic, if we have employees that are laid off and they exceed 25% of our total workforce, should we bring them back tomorrow? No. No. This is the critical thing. Forgiveness is great, okay, but you've got to do the math on this, because bringing them back could cost you more in profitability in the long run, and you may end up with a loan that's forgivable, but you just spent the money on those guys anyway and you just lost it all. What you want to do is, even if a portion of it's not forgivable, forecast out what your business is going to look like, because these are loans, again, that are 10-year amortized. You could qualify at less than 4%, and you can qualify for 6 to 12 months of abatement in payments. So make sure, or deferral of payments. So make sure you are, make sure you're doing the math on this, working with your internal accounting team to forecast out and do projections, because you don't want to just pay people, bring people back just to bring them back and then fire them again on July 1st, right? That's a lot of cost both ways, in and out. And it may be better for you just to take a loan that is actually not forgivable, but you're at least getting cheap money that can then help you get to profitability. Golan, we use a PEO for all our workforce. Do we still qualify? Yes, you do. Christopher, what if you have a layoff or furlough prior to the loan date? Does that have an impact on the loan amount itself? Yes, it does. It'll obviously reduce it down because your average pay would be down. And then we are looking at a furlough plan that will help with cash flow until the loan is funded. Again, I think you've got to think profitability first and foremost, and how that interacts with the loan secondarily. But get to profitability first and foremost. So, Chris, that's the way Christopher, that's the way I would do it. Greg, I'm doing payroll quarterly this year. I pay my employee quarterly. Do I simply divide by 3 to fill in the monthly salary? Yeah, you just take the annual and divide by 12 to get a monthly number. Waylon, we answered the 1099 one. Scott, to qualify for employee retention credit, operation of your business is fully or partially suspended. What's the definition of partially? Great question. I don't know. I would assume if it's like a restaurant or a hotel where it's like it was shut down and people can't be there, that would seem to me to be pretty partially suspended. Brianna, we're an S corporation. Will it be looked negative if we take a shareholder distribution? Yeah, probably. But it won't be looked at negative for the loan. It has no impact on it whatsoever. So you want to think about this in terms of overall cash flow and overall safety of the business. If you're taking big shareholder distributions at a time when your business is headed down, you may need that cash. So be prepared to put it back in. And again, the number one thing that I would think about is you don't want to take this paycheck protection loan and then all of a sudden give yourself a big bonus. That's probably going to look at pretty negatively in this whole scheme of things. Chris, does the payroll protection loan calculation include payments to 1099? Yes. Or is it salary, hourly questions only? All the above. Will you be sending out the slides afterwards? Yes, Jennifer, I'm going to be sending out to everybody. I'll make sure that the recording of this webinar is on my YouTube channel. our LinkedIn, where else? Facebook, my personal blog, and also we can send an email out to everybody with the recording. Whew, lots of stuff. Roxanne, this is great info. Thank you. I heard you mention that the payroll loan could be used to pay mortgage interest. That's correct. If you were one of those owners who own your own building, it can be used to pay mortgage interest, not mortgage principal, though. Can you please provide more information on how many months this could be used for? And also, can it be used for residential or commercial loans? It can't be used in residential loans. It is commercial loans. It's that 8-week period from the time you get the loan until the 8 weeks are done. That's the eligibility period for forgiveness. Blaine, how do you calculate health insurance costs into the paid leave tax credits and other tax credit loan options? So health insurance is part of wages for all of these calculations. And that's health insurance benefits. If you give life insurance, dental, vision, all that sort of stuff goes into the total compensation figures when calculating what the benefits could be. So that's great news. They've given us kind of everything that we spend on employees to be able to do that. And that'll maximize your benefit. What about, Don asked, what about K1? K1 income is not eligible for this. Lynn, is this recorded? Yes, it is, Lynn, and we'll get it out to everybody. Katrina. Let's see. This is another question, Katrina, about keeping employees versus furloughing them. I think you got to do the math on this, because you could have a reduction in the forgiveness of the Paycheck Protection Loan, but that might be taking less forgivable loan may be a better option than taking a full forgivable loan and costing yourself a ton of money in your business. Can you kill the application we sent to the SBA for disaster relief? Yeah, you just don't have to take it. So if they approve you, you can still say no. If we already applied for the disaster loan with the SBA, how does that impact the PPP application? Again, same thing, you don't have to take it. Krista, I work for a construction company. We've had only one project put on hold. Do we still qualify, although we're technically essential? Yes, you do, absolutely. If you already applied for the $10,000 advance on the EIDL loan, will that preclude you from the payroll loan? No, but you might have to refinance that loan with the payroll protection loan, which could take you, again, take some time to get through that. Goldman Sachs published guidance suggests eligibility for both PPP and EIDL loans if different use of funds rather than exclusivity. Do you have different info? No, so these loans are critically used for different purposes. Again, the Paycheck Protection Loan is used for payroll and occupancy costs. The disaster loans are used for any other expenses. They can be literally used for anything and everything. So they have much less restrictions. This is only, though, again, the Paycheck Protection Loan, that's to get forgiveness. The challenge is that they interact, so you can't have both. So if you've got the disaster loan, you need to get that refinanced by the Paycheck Protection Loan. They are used for different funds, though, and for very different purposes. Charles asks, is the $10,000 disaster loan assistance going to be forgiven? No, not that I can tell. There's nothing that would lead me to believe right now that that's the case. Let's see. Where do we actually send the application to? You're going to be working with the banker that you use. If you don't have a small business approved lender, let us know. Shoot us an email at info@tgg-accounting.com. We'll make sure you get introduced to bankers that are approved SBA lenders, but that's who ultimately the application goes to. All right, Christine asks, how do guaranteed payments for the restaurant owners work here? Guaranteed payments work just like other payments and salary. You're going to be able to put those in. They are eligible. Corey, are there banks that are willing to help as we're not hearing anything back from Chase? So Chase is a great bank. I actually talked to a Chase banker, but I'm hearing this from a lot of people. Bankers are absolutely overwhelmed and inundated with calls right now. So try to go to your banker if you've got a good banker. If not, again, email us and we'll get you in touch with somebody. Let's see. Scott asks, will a real estate brokerage qualify both staff and commissioned realtors? Yes. Yes, real estate brokerage, both commissions absolutely qualify for these Paycheck Protection Loans. Mary Ellen, if you were one of the first 100 to sign up for your organizer, does it include guidance? No, only that that other one includes guidance, the $1,500 price tag. Lauren, what if you've applied for the SBA disaster loan and not heard back? Do you have to wait to hear back before you apply for the Paycheck Protection Loan? No, and I would not do that. I would immediately apply for that Paycheck Protection Loan, and you can pull the application on the disaster loan if you get to that spot. Mark asks, can I include commissions paid to employees in the calculation? Yes. David, for the Paycheck Protection Loan, does access to credit elsewhere affect your eligibility? No, it doesn't, David. That's the good news. You can have term loans, you can have lines of credit, and still get the Paycheck Protection Loan. Good question. Casey, is the 100K limit inclusive of salary, bonus, state taxes, 401K insurance, or is it only including salary and wages? No, it's all that stuff, which is great. Wayland, if you hire new people, would their costs be covered under what is forgiven under the Paycheck Protection Loan? Yes, Wayland, it would be. As long as it goes towards payroll, that qualifies for a portion that would be forgiven. Mike, what relief exists around 401ks, et cetera? Well, on a personal level, you can take loans out of your 401ks without the early penalty. As part of this new stimulus package, I didn't really address the personal parts, the $1,200. It's because most business owners won't be eligible for it. But on the 401ks, you can take hardship withdrawals and not get affected by the pre-59.5 10% penalty. So for some people in a really bad spot, you're still going to have to pay income taxes on that amount. But that may be a source of funds of last resort. Edward, great job. We applied for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Oh, can we still apply for the PPP? Yep, just said that. If we get an SBA loan and a PPP refinance, is that part forgivable? Yes, it could be as long as the funds are used for the right purposes. Again, they have to be used for the appropriate purposes. Wow, lots of great questions here. I'm going to keep going and get through as many. I'll get through all of them. Do all eligible expenses during the covered period, February 15th through June 30th, count towards forgiveness? Yes. Or only 8 weeks payroll related plus other eligible expenses during coverage period? I think that's saying the same thing. I can't quite tell. Michelle, what if we are currently furloughing staff but plan to bring them back the next 4 weeks? How do we calculate what we're eligible for in regards to the amount? Well, the amount is going to be going backwards in time. So you can use full year 2019 payroll or February 15 to February 15 payroll to get that, and then find out what your monthly amount is. And again, no individual employee can have more than 100% or $100,000 towards our eligible amount. Andrea, how do I get a grant 10K? I'm an S Corp. If you're an S Corp, you're not eligible for those disaster grants. That's only sole proprietors and independent contractors. Don asks, I have 2 companies. Do both companies get to apply separately? I believe so. Where is the originator located on the website? Again, if you can't find it, we'll get it out in an email here. Chip, SBA employee criterion, ideas on how we should pursue over 500 exemption. We're just over 500 for last year. Average is 516 in the retail industry. I would really work with your banker on this and work with your local SBA economic development group. There are nonprofits that are helping. We work with a lot of them in Southern California, and they're wonderful. And they should be able to help you figure out if you can qualify for this or not. Gary Campanero, what are the specific requirements to show you are substantially affected by COVID-19? Again, great question, and the guidance hasn't come out yet on that. But that's a good question, and as soon as the guidance comes out, hopefully we'll get it out to you guys. Sridhar, small business owner in entertainment sector with 25 employees closed the business due to COVID-19. I took ownership on 2/20/2020, but the business was running for 9 years. Would I qualify for the PPP? Again, yes, it extends back to what you bought previously. Drew, can you combine 2302 with the Paycheck Protection Loans? Let me just check my numbers so that I get my numbers right. No, you can't. 2302 is the delay of the payment on federal payroll taxes. If you take that, you are excluded from the Paycheck Protection Loans. Good question, Drew. Michelle, we are a sole prop, do not have employees per se, and use staff agency for labor. Which is the best scenario since our operating expenses will continue? That's a tough one, Michelle. I would want to chat with you because your staffing agency labor is going to qualify as an independent contractor for you. So you should be able to qualify for the PPP loan, the payroll protection loan. But that would be one that I would want to check the contract you have with your staffing agency and understand really that relationship to make sure that's correct. Edward, you mentioned emerging economic injury grants. Where would you suggest we find these? These are also going through the SBA, so look at the SBA's website for that. Mark, how to calculate average number of hourly employees, total hours worked. It's what you're really looking at is not headcount, it's full-time equivalents, FTEs. That's what matters in this. Pauline, can you get the payroll protection plan loan if we have applied for the state work-share compensation plan? Yes, I believe you can. I think they're independent because one's a federal program and one's a state program. Again, apply for every state and local program you can find. Gary, is there a point where you have reduced wages or headcount that is too high to qualify? Maybe, but I doubt it unless you've done it before the coronavirus stuff happened. Because again, your qualification period on how much you can borrow is based on previous headcount and previous wages. Tony, are owners capped at 100K for the forgiveness threshold? Yes, and they're also capped at 100K, not at the forgiveness threshold, but they are capped at 100K for the loan threshold. Chris, if we've already done a layoff, will we qualify to receive some portion forgiven without having to bring everyone back? Yes, you'll still qualify with some portion being able to be forgiven. It's a pro rata thing. So you'll still get some forgiven for sure. Jonathan, I missed the webinar. Will it repeat or will you send a recording? We'll get a recording out. Janai, where do you find the lenders that work with SBA loans? I saw a list that was minimal and didn't see any big name banks. Almost every big name bank is going to be an SBA approved lender, especially now. I was talking with a friend of mine on Thursday in seeing this thing coming, and I said, are you guys an SBA approved lender? And he said, no, but we will be by Monday. So most of the time you're gonna be okay. Teresa, can you review the calculation of the per employee salary? Is it just salary or are we adding health, taxes, et cetera? Again, it's salary, commissions, it's bonuses, it's severance pay that you pay to other people, it's state payroll taxes, not federal payroll taxes. It's not income taxes. So you can't do any income tax withholdings that go into that figure. And it's employee benefits, profit sharing plans, benefits, 401k matches, that sort of stuff. Owner is LLP, so no wages but draws. Assume K1 income from partners is not eligible. That's correct, Ray. Alexandra, we are owners who are not salaried. We receive distributions. Do those distributions qualify under the 7th? No, they don't. Unfortunately, distributions are K1. Joseph, if we have a private transportation company and most employees are part-time, how does that work for them? Again, it's the same concept applies. You're going to be looking at wages and headcount. And really, when you calculate your loan amount, it's going to be on a full-time equivalent basis. And on the forgiveness basis, it'll be how much either the wages declined or if they declined at all, and how many people headcount you have below that 25% threshold. Okay, Deanna, we are a startup, opened in October 2019. 10 part-time employees, have not received a paycheck yet. Can I add myself in payroll now? You can add yourself in payroll now. Again, you say nothing crazy. So that's, again, what I would advise. Keep it reasonable. But you'll be eligible for payment under the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, but not obviously your salary because it wasn't there before won't be eligible for the determining how big the loan is. Gary, as long as you don't reduce wages or headcount by more than 25%, do you get 100% forgiveness? No. If your wages reduce at all, you get a percentage pro rata decrease in forgiveness. If your headcount goes below 25 or greater than 25%, you get a pro rata decrease. So it's both, not either or. David, that was a great webinar, extremely helpful. Will you be sending a recording? Yes, absolutely. Laura, I had an employee on unpaid leave of absence due to maternity in 2019. Any way to handle that? Well, she's going to be coming back on, and unfortunately, her salary is not going to be beneficial for you in calculating the amount of the loan you could receive. But again, her new salary you can use as forgivable component of expense. Lynette, can you apply for a paycheck loan when you only have one employee? Yes, as long as they're an employee. KZ, what's the pathway for sole proprietors who are solopreneurs, no employees? Great job, Matt and team, thank you. So the pathway forward is if you're paying yourself a salary or any amount that's on your Schedule C, you can still get this paycheck protection loan. So that's great news. Independent contractors are eligible. So that's probably your best way forward. Mark, what about the personal credit issues of the primary owner? Believe it or not, they're not doing credit checks with this. This is not a credit issue. Again, there's no personal guarantees on these loans, which is great. And so that's not really going to be impacting them. Steve, is the 100K salary cap by employees a combination of everything listed under eligible compensation, salary, severance, state payroll taxes? Yes, it is. So you add all that stuff together and it can't go over 100K per employee when you're determining your base to multiply by 2.5. Terry, new business only open 6 months, having payroll still qualify? Yes, you can use January and February's payroll, January through February 15th payroll, and average that out to qualify for the Paycheck Protection Loan as well. I'm a sole proprietorship. I don't pay myself a W-2 salary, but just take cash from the business account to my personal account when I want. Does that count as salary? It doesn't, but if you file a Schedule C, that amount is eligible as an independent contractor for the payroll protection loan. We went through the distributions question. There's a moratorium, Teresa says, there's a moratorium on evictions for commercial and residential per the order released last week by Gavin Newsom. Yes, this is a state-by-state thing. I didn't address this because we have people from all over the country on this. But in California, there is a moratorium on evictions, and that's something that you obviously want to take advantage of. But I would encourage you to have conversations with the landlord, not just rely on that, because at the end of the day, we still have leases. There's still got to be business done, and at some point, you want to have a good relationship with them. Stephen, does it matter the number of revenue sources that you have to qualify for the payroll protection loan program? No, the revenue doesn't have anything to do with it. It really is strictly about employees. All right. Being in the trade show business, it will be at least 3 months before we consider bringing back employees because there is no business, at least until then. So we would not apply for the PPP until later because we need to be operational during the ensuing 8-week period. Are we at risk by waiting to apply for the loan? Could the government run out of funds? Yes and yes. I'm just speculating here. Okay, this is just me guessing. I don't know that the $350 billion that they applied to this particular program is enough. I know that sounds like a crazy figure, but it may not be enough. So, you may want to think about that in terms of your business and get that payroll protection loan now. And understand that most of it's not going to be forgivable, but that might be a better move. Again, don't let the loan programs kind of throw you around to making a bad business decision. Make the best business decisions you can first. Emmanuel, for a SaaS company, does Amazon Web Service cost count as a utility? Unfortunately, no. That's a hosting service. Drew, do we need to file separate applications for all 3 of our LLCs? Do S-Corp owner distributions count? Yeah, distributions don't count. And yes, you probably need to file separate for every tax ID number. Again, be monitoring and be careful of those common ownership rules. They're pretty complicated. Steve, can you defer company Social Security payments and participate in? No, yeah, you can't defer. You can't use the deferral and the payroll protection program. It's one or the other. Robert, can you revisit 1099 wages? Does this mean anyone I am paying as a contractor can be included in the payroll protection loan? Yes, as the way the bill's written right now, that is exactly what it says. Brett. We have limited need for full-time staff due to a low amount of customers in our centers. How do we compensate those who either choose to stay home or we don't need on-site until our customer base returns? That's a great business question. And Brett, I would really want to, that's a very personal one. I mean, you may want to give them some sort of a furlough or find something else that they can do that's valuable to do. But again, you want to be careful. You want to retain good people, but be careful to do your forecasting and make sure you're not retaining people to a point where it's really going to hurt your business. Marie, how can I find this webinar on your website and share with those who missed? Marie, again, we'll send it out, a link with the recording on it. Anonymous, if I get a 100K payroll protection loan and spend it only on payroll and rent for 3 months, will it be fully forgiven by the bank or government? It's that 8-week period, not 3 months. So it's an 8-week time frame which you have to judge the forgiveness. Can you speak a little bit about the grants? So there's local grants that I talked about. Those are going to be different for every locality. Local cities, counties, and state governments are all looking at grants and different rules. So that's something you should take a look at locally. Then the other one is the federal government grant that's for sole proprietors and independent contractors. And that's a $10,000 grant for business interruption. And again, you apply with that for that with the SBA. Okay, Victoria. If you do not personally guarantee, does it still mess up your credit if you ask for forgiveness? No, it doesn't. It does not go against your credit at all, which is great. Robert Siegel, I thought you could still get a disaster loan and then convert a portion to the Paycheck Protection Loan. Is this true? That is true. That's exactly the way you could do it. I think the Paycheck Protection Loan is going to be better than the disaster loans, though, because the disaster loans are not forgivable, which is Jessica's question. Next here, Edward. I have a line of credit with Wells Fargo for several years. Will we still qualify for the PPP? Yes, absolutely. That's what's nice about this versus the payroll tax, versus the disaster loan. Disaster loans, if you have other credit, you can't qualify for the PPP. Let's see. What qualifies one for the 12-month deferral of the payroll protection program after the initial 8-week period? That is unclear, and it looks like you can just go ask your bank for that deferral, and at least what the bill says is you should be able to get it. Amanda, what about health coverage? Is that in the calculation? Yes, it is. Ed, 2.5 times including owner compensation. Yes. Kelsey, do you include 2019 lease and utility costs as well as payroll to determine the amount you can borrow? No, just in terms of the amount you can get forgiven. The amount you can borrow is really just the 2.5 times that compensation up to those 100,000 per employee limits. Eddie, if you have no payroll and apply for Paycheck Protection Loan and get denied, does this make you eligible for the small dollar advance grant? Yeah, not unless you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor. Let's see, Victoria. It also says transportation. I am assuming car payments, fuel. Can I include auto insurance? This is something, Victoria, that's going to come out in the regulations. I have no idea right now what they meant by transportation, because I don't know how that was included in occupancy costs, but it was in the bill, and it literally just says transportation. So we're waiting on guidance from them as to what that means. Caroline, yep, recording is available and we'll get it out. Does the 100 max per employee include salary and the added benefits? Yes, it's all of that stuff. Kathleen, where is there a link for the organizers? Thanks for the fabulous tool. We'll have it on our website and also, again, get it out to you in a direct email as well. Drew, rent and utilities are above the salary numbers, correct? Yes, you're going to pay for salary and then you can do rent and utilities to determine the amount that's forgivable during that 8-week period. James, the Act also waives the personal guarantee requirement and the requirement for applicants to demonstrate that they are unable to obtain credit from other source on the disaster loan. That's the first I've heard about the other credit, because that may be something new in the Act. And if so, I missed that and I apologize. I thought that the disaster loans, you were only eligible if you could not get credit from other sources. Anna, did I hear that you said you can't get the disaster loan if you already have a line of credit? That's my understanding, Anna, yeah. Cholan, abatement or deferral? You answered, answered the question. Okay, good. Butch, our preschool teachers get a 50% discount on childcare. Is that counted in benefits for PPP? Yes, if you are giving them a benefit, which is otherwise compensation to them, absolutely that counts towards the Paycheck Protection Loan. Tony, hi Matt, we do co-living housing with multiple LLCs as a sole member. We also have a portfolio of mobile home parks in another state with separate LLC as sole member. As the SBA application allows the individual to apply only once, how do we apply for multiple LLCs and businesses? This is something I would take, Tony, directly to your banker, because I think that this is going to be an application issue. And a lot of them have portals. A lot of the big banks have portals already to apply and make the application process a little simpler. Chip. Is there any number of employee number cap for the employee retention credit? 100, 500, no limit. So for the, you're talking about the employee retention credit, which is section 2301. Yes, if you have greater than 100 employees, you get a 50% credit on wages paid. But again, they have to be sort of sitting around doing nothing. If you have less than 100 employees, you're going to get a $5,000 per quarter credit for the next 3 quarters, which relates to about a $15,000 credit. But again, you're only eligible if your business has declined in revenue 50% or more over the same period, or you were shut down by coronavirus. Okay, with the 1 year period prior to the loan calc, can we use full year 2019, or is there a required 1 year period? For the payroll protection loan, again, you can use the full year of 2019 or February 15 to February 15. Alexandra, if the entirety of the SBA 7A loan is used to repay payroll, utilities, rent, is the entirety of the loan forgivable? If you use it within those 8 weeks for that, yes. Eric, employee retention. What if you have to hire all new employees, entry level, and move on? Well, again, you could get that payroll protection. It's about wages and number of employees. So if you have a full-time employee headcount that's just the same size as it was before, you just churned them all over, that would still qualify as far as I read the bill. Mark, can you go over one more time how to determine the PPP amount for a company that substantially increased the payroll in January and February of 2020? Yeah, I would use your payroll from February 15, 2019 to February 15, 2020 to get the maximum amount you can use so that you get the largest possible loan under this program. Richard asks, is there any tax implications on the loan forgiven amount? No, again, that's the great part of this, is it's forgiveness without income taxes. Golan, is there a deadline to apply for these? Yes, they're only open until June 30th. Jason, do you have to borrow the full amount of the loan if you're worried you may not use all of it? This is a great question, Jason. I would borrow the full amount of the loan and take a look at what you do over the next 8 weeks once you get the money. And if at the end of the 8 weeks, you don't need it and you don't need it for business purposes, give it back and pay it back right then without any interest, because you got 8 weeks of no principal or interest payments. Sophia, what if the company furloughed the majority of employees? Can the loan be used to rehire them? That's exactly what it is meant to be used for, so absolutely. Laura, there is an 8-week timing for needing to spend the PPP loan by. That's correct. Can you pay expenses incurred before you get the loan? How far back? Nope. You get it from the day you get the loan to 8 weeks prospective, 8 weeks in the future. And that's where you spend the loan proceeds. Richard, what's the 12-month period specifically for the PPP loan? That's just to determine your average payroll to get your 2.5 to figure out your loan amount. Victoria, is it only for employees that are being paid or staying home? No. No. It's for all employees. Chriselle, where can I see the 17-step process again? Chriselle, we're going to get out a link so that you can see that 17-step organizer that we have. Steve, is the payroll protection loan forgiveness considered taxable income? Nope, went through that. Christine, so we get the money, hire back employees, but not open for business. How does this benefit the business? That's a great point, Christine. If you're doing this just to get the loan, don't. Or get the loan and don't hire people back. Think about profitability first. Let's see. Our company's small headcount 6, but 20 million north revenue. So payroll protection loan 75K is okay, but a 2 million at 4% seems to be a better benefit. I would agree. Karen, in my C Corp, I am 49% owner and he is 51. I'm filling out the information on me. Do I need to include his information? He does not participate in the business at all. But as a physician's assistant, I can only own 49% of the practice because of the medical ownership rules and licensing rules. So, Karen, this is something I would go through with your bank, because this is going to be a bank application question, and it's going to vary from bank to bank. So really check with your bank and your SBA lender on that one. Jacob, if I started my business in Q3, how will they look at what I qualify regarding payroll? Again, they'll use your payroll from the time you started until February 15th. Sean, for payroll protection, is the total insurance or just the company paid portion used for the loan calc? Just the company paid portion. Good question. Some anonymous, can I still pay for the payroll protection if I'm just starting to see a 10% reduction? Yes, absolutely. Victor, can the payroll protection loan be used for retraining programs? Absolutely. It may not be able to be forgiven under that program, but it absolutely can be. And again, this is a good loan. So think about your business and how you're going to make money in the future. All right, Alexandra. It seems that the forgiveness of loan is prorated. If you reduce salaries in excess of 25%, what if we cut salaries by 40%? Can we get full forgiveness if we make our employees whole by 6/30? Yes, that's exactly how this works. Will a single member S Corp qualify? Yes. Anonymous. Will the organizer be able on your website? Yes, very shortly here. We are going to lay off a non-exempt administrative assistant because their work has been drastically reduced due to everyone working remotely rather than cutting her hours. Is it better to keep paying her full-time even though there's not much work for her? Would reducing our staff affect the PPP loan? It affects the forgiveness of the loan, but not the amount of the loan because we're using the old numbers to affect the amount. So once again, use your best judgment and make a better business decision than just thinking about the loan. Hugh, how should a VC-backed business think about COVID-19 impact to their business? And the key impact is lack of future VC funding and a lack of customer demand in the coming months. I think I'd refer you back to the webinar that I did last Tuesday, where we went through a litany of things on how to survive and thrive in this business, whether it was cost cutting, whether it was cash hoarding, whether it's putting together your crisis team, because I think that's a great question, Hugh. And really, that's available again on our website. It's available on our YouTube channel and on LinkedIn and Facebook. Brett, 100K comp limit is inclusive of salary benefits or is it limited? Okay, so I think what you're asking here is, if we're paying somebody more than 100K salary, can we still use the payroll protection loan for that and get forgiveness? Yes, but it's not gonna count towards the amount of the loan. We have K1 members, you're an LLC. Guaranteed payments do count towards this. K1 amounts do not. Tim, if we have multiple entities, is it possible to get a payroll protection loan for one entity and a payroll tax credit for the other? It could be. It could be depending on that ownership stuff, because again, there's some really challenging ownership rules. If you get above 20% common ownership, you really want to check those out. Lynn, what do you mean by transportation costs? Good question, Lynn. I don't know. That's what we're waiting for the federal government to tell us what they mean by that. Kelly, if you make red payments that were deferred prior to the 8 weeks, would they be forgivable? Most likely, yes. It looks like they would be. Wendy, I have already reduced hours and salaries for employees. Once I get the loan, I can put them back to normal pay. Will I be applying for the lesser amount or the amount I put them back to? You're going to be applying based on the salaries that you had last in 2019, and that should cover what you put them back to. Would commission sales reps qualify for the PPP calculation? Yes, absolutely. And what if they're terminated at some point in the next 90 days? If they're terminated post June 30th, you still qualify for forgiveness. Jennifer, if you have a line of credit or other means to pay your expenses, will you be eligible for the Paycheck Protection Loan? Yes. Is there help for small business that don't have employees? Yes, that's the credit. I'm sorry, the $10,000 credit. I'm blanking on the name right now, but yes, I think it's economic development credit. Hold on, get my notes. Emergency economic injury grant. Sorry about that. Paul, can the loans be backdated to 2/15? No. They're going to give you the loan as of the date you get it, and that's going to be your timing for that 8-week period. Laura, all 1099s and limits. It looks right now like all 1099s, but let's wait and see what the regulations come out, because I'm sure that's going to change. For the Paycheck Protection Loan, we are not shut down, but see 70% decrease minimum is the equation for what we are eligible. Employee compensation plus number of employees. No, it's not the decrease. So times the 70% reduction. It's not the reduction. That is what you're going to be eligible for forgiveness. In calculating the loan amount, remember, you're just going to go back to last year's average payroll. Scott, let's see. I have 2 member LLCs for my personal real estate business, 50-50 ownership. In addition, I'm a 50% co-owner in an S-Corp real estate brokerage. Does this mean both entities can apply for the Paycheck Protection Act? Probably not, because of the common ownership. And so that's what you're really going to want to dive into. Happy to help you with that. Again, shoot us an email. That stuff is very complex and even above what we were talking about today. Let's see. Stephen, is the PPL program based on wages paid for the time period or earned during the time period? Paid. Blaine, for Paycheck Protection Program, you can qualify for the loan even if you don't experience a loss in revenue, but only anticipate one at some point in the future. Yes, absolutely. Laura, what is the max of the payroll protection loan? 10 million. That is the ceiling for anybody, any one business. Can the payroll protection loan go towards back rent? It can, but it may or may not be forgiven. I would assume that back rent, like in the last month, would qualify towards forgiveness. But if you're going back, years, that may not be able to be forgiven. All right, Annie, if you don't shut down and don't lose more than 50% of your income, neither of the tax credit options apply. Not the payroll protection loan still applies for sure. Jennifer, I had to lay off about 30% of my employees last week. What level of employment do I need to be back to in order to qualify for loan forgiveness under the PPL? You're going to get some loan forgiveness. Even if you've laid off 30%, you still get 70% forgiveness. So it's not about that. Make sure you're, again, doing the right thing for the business more than necessarily getting the forgiveness. But if you wanted to get forgiveness, you could rehire those people at the same levels and you'd be getting back to 100% forgiveness. Wendy, if there's any money left in the account after 8 weeks, the unused funds will not be forgiven. Is this correct? That is correct. So any unused funds will not be forgiven. That'll be part of the new loan. And again, if you don't need it, you could just simply pay it back interest-free and you won't have a loan. If you need it, you can carry it forward at that 4%, 10 years, all the other good stuff about the loan. Susie, if we keep the payroll protection loan and we need to track our expenses for the 8 weeks to look at forgiveness, but I've laid off half the staff, should we bring everyone back right away after the loan? Again, Susie, no, not necessarily. You want to make sure you're making a good business decision. This really just impacts the forgiveness of the loan. You're still going to get the cash. So think about the benefit of bringing them back versus the profit that you're going to lose and weigh those benefits. Michael, does payroll protection cover salary for employees here on a work visa or contractors that come in from another country? Yes. It doesn't qualify for people you hire outside of the U.S., but it does qualify for foreign workers you're working in the U.S. Good question. We are angel funded, starting to pay our principals from June of last year, and we dropped payments in half in October due to cash flow concerns. Been paying on 1099s to the entities they own directly. We also have deferred compensation for these to worry about. How do we address these? Revenue hasn't kicked in yet. First customer invoice only went out 2 weeks back. So your deferred compensation is not going to count towards your payroll protection loan, but the 1099s most likely will. Sage says, wait, what was that date so fast? I know, I'm sorry, I'm talking fast. I'm trying to get through all the questions here. I'm not sure exactly what date you're referring to. Umar, under the SBA, the companies can apply for both the EIDL and the disaster loan and the payroll protection. However, you can't duplicate benefits received. That's absolutely correct. And I would try to go with the payroll protection loan versus the disaster loan because a big portion of the payroll protection loan is forgivable. So that's my advice there. Robin, my company is a partnership LLC. My salary is paid as a guaranteed payment to the other company. Okay, this is where your guaranteed payment may not be covered because if it's a guaranteed payment as an LLC, it's paid to you as an individual. If it's paid to the other company, it may not qualify for calculations towards that payroll protection loan limits. Miriam, I didn't have a paycheck before. Can I still apply for paycheck protection as my husband and I are the only employees but didn't take a check for the last 3 years? No, because it will really only apply to your payroll, and previous payroll is how you calculate how much you're eligible for. K-1 payments are not considered wages. Good question, Don. Ori, let's see, G1. Yeah, we'll get you a copy of today's session. What is the position if you have not yet filed 2019 tax returns, only 2018? Well, it'd be pretty common to not file 2019. And remember, they pushed back, not the filing dates, but the payment dates to July 15th. So that's another positive sort of relief effort. And then really look at seeing whether or not you can refile back into 2018 and then file for 2019 so that you take advantage of those accelerated depreciation or net operating loss carry or look backs that you can do now. All right, Christopher, there's a cap of 100K in getting the loan amount. Is that cap applied in what's forgiven during the funding? No. So it's just it's a good question. It's applied to how much you can get, but you can obviously pay more than to people who earn more than 100K. You can still pay that, and that goes towards the forgiveness. Annie, where do I go to read this? So the best summary I saw of this bill when I was doing this was the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. That was the most thorough one. But even that had some question marks in it. So that's the best one I found. For the PPP, why does the SBA establish a date range of 2/15 to 6/30 to calculate monthly average payroll? Good question. I don't know. What they're saying is 2/15 is the date of the FTEs, and that this program ends on 6/30. That's really those two dates. All right. Drew, please go over the two options for the time frame to calculate the salary numbers. So it's full year 2019 or February 15, 2019 to February 15, 2020. Duck, I don't have a business mortgage. It's my personal mortgage qualified for forgiveness. No. Mark, what about agency leased employees? Do they count in average monthly payroll calculations? Yes, they do. Lori, when do you anticipate official regulations being released? Sometime in the next couple days. Hopefully by the end of the week at latest. Mac, does your personal credit affect anything? No. Darren, clarify, insurance and benefits included, workers' comp and health? Yes. All those payroll costs. Robin, my building is owned in a different LLC and rent is being paid from one company to the other. Will my rent then be excluded from the rent payments? No, as long as you're paying yourself a reasonable rent, I would never estimate that rent would be excluded. Scott, if you had 1099 salespeople in 2019 and converted them to W-2 for AB5, can we take their 1090? Yes, you can take their 1099 income as well as their payroll for 2019 and add that together. All right. We are considering a sub-debt raise from friends and family to stabilize the balance sheet. How would this impact our participating in the Paycheck protection program? It would not at all. Bob, if we had multiple S-Corps, do we need to get multiple organizers from TGG? Unfortunately, it's a single organizer for every business because every business is going to have a unique tax ID number. But if you have multiples, call us. We'll talk about getting you a discount for those. Kelly, if employee chooses not to come back, could you hire others to make up the difference? Yes, you can. Michelle, could you submit your application for the PPP loan at multiple institutions to see who approves first? I don't see any problem in doing that other than you're only going to get one of them. So you're going to want to make sure you're really conscious of them not to, approve you and then fund it, because I think they're going to try to do this very quickly. Anna, do they have to stay employed until June 30th? This is really a forgiveness question, Anna, and it's a matter of what your either wages or headcount is between that 8-week period from the time you get the loan until that 8 weeks is done. Ori, independent contractors are included in employee health or employee count? Yes. Anonymous, can international contractors be included as part of our FT count? No. International contractors are not included for this. Norman, do you have to take the 2.5 times or can you take less? So Norman, you don't have to take the 2.5 times. I would take the 2.5 times for the 8 weeks and then just hand back whatever you don't use, so that or whatever part is not forgiven. That's probably the best overall suggestion. That way you're controlling the funds. Mike, you had the same question. If I own my building through another LLC, can I include the cost of the rent payments or based on the principal and interest of the bank? It's the rent payments that I think you'd want to use. Jennifer, and also, do I have to rehire the same employees that were laid off? No, you don't have to hire the same ones. Rick, what is the time frame for forgiveness calculations? That's that 8-week time frame. And the future average gross salary takes place over that same 8 time frame. Stephen, is the 2.5 times average paycheck one-time loan? Yes, it is. But your average is got to be, it is capped at the 100K. So you're going to have to figure out what that looks like per employee. Michael, do consulting contractors costs qualified that are not 1099 because they work for a corporation or not individual contractors? No, I don't believe so. I don't believe that would qualify. I had 17 employees last year. As of 2/15, we were down to 13. Due to employees department, we did not replace them. We have not laid anyone off. Will my forgiveness be decreased by 24%? No, not reduced for that, because it's as of 2/15/2020. is where that decrease, that full-time equivalent comes from in the number of employees. All right, I've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm going to try my best to get through these, through any of them I can. If I don't answer all of them, please feel free to email me directly, shoot an email to info, or reach out to us directly. Warren, can we use shared worker unemployment programs to lower our employees to 32 hours each? Yes, I think that's a great idea. Again, you want to do what's in your best interest of your business. Joker, I've been a sole proprietor for a few years where my employees were under the company that I was contracting under, and I'm in the process of becoming an S Corp. Just started with employees on 2/17, and am I eligible for the payroll protection? No, you're not, unfortunately, except for your portion, which is your sole proprietor income. Edward Garcia, we hire several independent contractors to help our small firm. May we include contractors into our payroll protection plan? If you give them a 1099, right now it appears you can, but let's wait to see the regulations because I think there's going to be something coming out on that. Scott, do 1099 salespeople count in FTEs in 2019? Yes, they do. We converted them to W-2 in January, but yes, I understand exactly what you're saying, and they do count towards FTEs. Warren, when the PPL loan goes through, we would bring all employees back up to full employment. Would this be acceptable under the program? Absolutely. It's kind of exactly what it's designed for. Don, so the loan amount calculation amount is 2.5 months, but we need to pay the money out in 2 months. Yes, because Don, they're also giving you money for rent and utilities, and that's that extra half a month. Deborah, is there a list of items needed for the loan? It's generally the 7A requirements, but that's why we put this organizer together so that we've got all those requirements in there. And that's probably the best. Natalie, where is the organizer located? I tried to find it on your site so I could sign up. Yeah, Natalie, it'll be coming. We'll get it out to you here very shortly within the next, well, hopefully within the next 24 hours. Joan, what about if our employees are applying for unemployment benefits? They can apply for unemployment benefits, but if you rehire them, obviously that affects their benefits. So you'll want to think through, again, whether you rehire them or not, and make a business decision on that, not a loan decision. I know I've said that about 50 times, but that's really important. Annie, why did you mention business might want to refile in 2018? Because Annie, if you had net operating losses or if you had done TIs, you could actually get accelerated depreciation, refile in 2018 and get a refund from the IRS that would really improve your cash position. Stephen, we'll get you a link out for the webinar by the end of the day here today. Vince, you answered this question, but I'm going to ask it again. If my business has not been affected yet, but I'm worried that the business will slow down, what do I write as my reason for the payroll protection loan? I would say that every business has been affected. And so I would write something to the effect of, I anticipate a significant slowdown in my business as a result of this virus. Wendy, same thing on the organizer. That, again, we'll get that out there shortly. Marilyn, what if the company has not filed the 2019 return? Can it still qualify for the payroll protection loan? Yes, you can. Perry, we have a lot of seasonal construction employees. We typically ramp up around May because we need good weather to work. Is it only FTEs that count in our look back? No, it's average FTEs, and you're going to use your entire payroll. They actually have a good calculation for seasonal employees, which is why they allow you to stretch it or condense the average period you're using. David, can you explain more about how the forgiveness amount is calculated in regard to how the 8-week period compares to the 2019 amounts? So what they do is they say you had X number of employees. Let's say you had 100 employees on February 15th. That's the number of employees date. And then the average wages is for that past year. And those are the two qualifying factors. And if either one of those goes down, if the number of FTEs goes down by more than 25%, they're going to reduce the amount of forgiveness. If the wages go down at all, they're going to reduce the amount of forgiveness down on a pro rata basis. So that's how it works over that next 8-week period of time. Darren, any idea if a C Corp with a sole foreign owner would qualify? I don't know. That's a good question. That is not covered as far as I could tell in the bill. Juan, we have a sublessee who reimburses us a portion of the entire rent cost. Can I use the full rent cost or my net rent cost? I would assume just the net rent cost. Julia, you mentioned earlier that payroll tax deferment will make you ineligible for payroll protection program. Can you explain further? Yeah, that's it. It's just you can't do both. It's pretty simple. Unfortunately, if you do the payroll to X credit, you don't get the payroll paycheck protection loans. All right, Sheetal, can we file for both an operating entity and the real estate holding company? Again, you can, but you want to be careful not to fly afoul of those common ownership interest rules. Melissa, I think you mentioned the 8-week period would be a good time to prepay employee benefits. If you, again, let's wait till the regulations come out. If that's allowed, yes, I think that would be a great idea. And prepaying rent and utilities would also be a good idea so that you can get the maximum amount forgiven. Jim, our employee count is already down in 2020 compared to 2019 before any effect. If we hire people before 6/30 that have a different job descriptions, can they be counted towards our employee count? Yes. What about if we have let people go due to COVID and hire people by June 2020 in a different area of the business? Can that increased employee count help us? Yes, to both. Josh, we'll get you the slides for today. Natalie, thanks for the webinar. Great information. Thanks, Natalie. Anonymous, what are the best options for federally illegal businesses, i.e. cannabis, that can't qualify for federal or SBA? That's a good point, because no illegal businesses can qualify for any of this. The number one thing that you can do is unfortunately, there is no federal programs. There may be state or local programs, but I would doubt that as well. I haven't heard anything on that front. What you could do is again, check out the webinar from last Tuesday and do everything possible to make your business as successful as possible. That's really your option there. Ron, do we need to maintain 100% of our headcount in order to be eligible for 100% loan forgiveness? No, the headcount could actually go down by as much as 25%, but the wages have to stay at 100%. Carla, just to confirm, so if they apply for the disaster, then later apply for the PPP, do they still qualify if they don't take advantage of the disaster loan? Yes. Melissa, do you have an idea of where the PP fund, of when the PPP fund after, oh, how long, I think they're asking, Melissa's asking, how long will we get the funds after an application? They're telling me 24 to 48 hours. Carla, if you take the 10K grant, can you still take advantage of the PPP? Yes. Can I download the webinar to share? Yes. Can we get a copy of this recording? Yes. Sorry, I'm getting waved off here on the 2-minute warning. So I'm going to keep getting these out as fast as I can, but if I miss any, again, sorry, there's hundreds of questions here. I'm just going to do my best. We changed from being an S-Corp to an LLC, a Jan 1, new EIN. Should we be looking at our January to Feb payroll instead of 2019 payroll? I would take a look at which one's greater so that you can get the maximum loan and do that. Thomas, do employees on the new expanded FMLA count towards your head count? That's a good question. That's a California thing versus federal. So I would assume yes, because they were employees, but that's something that the federal government and California are not necessarily going to be in sync on. And this is the payroll protection loan is a federal thing. So I'm not sure that it's going to matter what California thinks of employees or not. Rob, what's the URL for Paycheck protection loan application? So the payroll protection loan applications are going to be at your bank. So they're not going to be, usually not going to be through the SBA. Let's see, Wendy. Will it depend on the lender if we can pay our in advance, our rent in advance for the year during that 8-week period? It might. Christopher, is the loan amount automatically the 2.5 times, or could we lower it? It's automatically that, and you can lower it by just paying it back. Josh, so it sounds like people who are under the 100K can get a raise for 8 weeks to make more of it forgivable. It's true. That would be one of the loopholes in this. Linda, what if you were taking monthly draws from the business not on payroll? That will not qualify. Robin, if we're transitioning to the workshare program, hours are reduced, but all medical and 401k still being made, that will go, but the workshare hours will not. All right, look, lots of amazing stuff here today. I want to thank you all very much for your time and energy and effort in this small business community. We've all got to band together. This is a really ridiculous and tough time, but there are businesses in every industry that are going to survive. There are business owners who are going to make it through this. There are going to be advisors who help them through this. If there's anything that I can do to help you at any time, please let us know. If there's anything that our firm can do to help you at any time, please let us know. You've got our contact information. Thank you all very much, and have a very safe and happy April.